Thank you, Shamalis. And I'm going to use the opportunity to explain to you a little bit about our program, and hopefully that will also help us identify areas of common interest and future work. The Global Water for Sustainability program starts in 2004 as a joint venture between the USA entity, which is the Cooperation Agency of the United States, and Florida International University. As time has progressed, the USAID is not our only financial source, but as you will see, still our major programs in our portfolio is under USAID. In GLOWS, we work mostly in water supply and sanitation and hygiene services, but also in integrated water resources management and improved water management practices, and very important components related to building local capacities, and our education and research are embedded in these components. We do not work alone, so GLOW's program is led by Florida International University, but we work with many other major organizations and international NGOs, many of which you definitely know, like for example WWF or WaterAid or CARE. Oops, sorry, I went to the end for some reason. Okay, so so WaterAid, CARE, Windruck Internationals, and others. So the various organizations that form part of the group that implements GLOW's activity bring a number of opportunities and experiences to our programs. And in that regard, we are a I would say, thematic group. A little bit about FIU. FIU stands for Florida International University, and basically we are a student-centered urban university, and the concept of urban is important to us because our research is dedicated mostly in terms of public research and bringing in various participants and not just the academia, which constitute our university. We are experiencing an increasing amount of activity at the global level. Definitely Latin America and Mexico are our major areas of intervention. We have the concept of an international research and education program is not just because of our name, but it's really part of our philosophy. So we foster multicultural and also I would say, thematic environment within FIU. And we have as a goal that our students should be citizens of the world and not just citizens of Florida, citizens of the United States. Our university is also characterized by hosting the biggest student population in any U.S. university from Latin America. So we are a minority serving institution also. So this is very important to understand why all our programs are always aiming to go beyond the frontiers of our university and to engage participation of researchers and academicians of various parts of the world. Now, in terms of contribution to international development, within FIU, the Global Water for Sustainability program is the major entity. We have a portfolio of over $75 million in research applied for development throughout the world. The GLOWS program that started in 2004 has gone a process of transition and is in the process of turning into university-wide research center that will then foster the GLOWS program. And this is being done in order to utilize the opportunity that this program of international nature is within a university to expand the experiences and also the results that we are undertaking through our individual programs, and translate that to our faculty and also to our students. So this center will be a university-wide, and it will be multidisciplinary with emphasis on water, global change, and food security. This way we can consolidate our results and at the same time engage in other new opportunities of building capacity, supporting development, and carrying out research at FIU and beyond. This gives you a little bit of what, where do we work mostly, and as you can see, the current projects are mostly in Central America, also in North and South America, very large projects in West Africa, which is regional projects, and also in East Africa, Rwanda, Tanzania. We have worked in India, we have worked in Northern Africa, Morocco, Peru, Ecuador, and also in programs that deal with the entire sub-Saharan Africa. And the kind of drop that we have over in the Caucasus is an expanding program that started with integrated natural resources management in watershed, and that is now going into other areas of expertise, in particular, hopefully by the end of the year, also in energy. And Ryan here is our coordinator of our Georgia programs. I'm going to go very quickly and try to give you an overview of our program so that you can understand why we call this meeting and why we're trying to brainstorm with you and see if you can help us. Because GLOS is a very, I will say, strange animal, because we're not an academic entity. We're not really a center, as you will understand, a university center. We do applied research. We do not just do research if it's not really applied to the addressing a specific development-oriented problem. We do a lot of capacity building with students, but we have a vast population of quote-unquote students that are government officials, professionals in the field, community leaders, and also from areas that have nothing to do with water, but these are policymakers and decision makers that influence the water sector. So for us, the development of all of our projects is, and the concept of sustainability beyond the scope of the project is very important. And as you will see as I go very quickly, and I'm not going to go through reading all of this, just to give you an idea, our individual projects have addressed various issues. For example, this is one of our initial projects that is already ended officially, but we continue to work with the Ecuadorians and the Peruvians. And in this particular case, the main goal was to involve indigenous community and to try to solve conflicts with the petroleum company, a little bit like what you have in the South, and how these indigenous communities that had their own concepts of water resources management can work with governments of two countries, but also with big enterprises in the region. In India, we work in a different way, and here we were mostly trying again to involve local people from the community and try to involve in providing mechanism for more equitable water in a region that is actually water rich. You will see some of the areas of more water scarcity in this part of India. In Tanzania and Kenya, in a partnership with Coca-Cola, we worked in the development of alliances between incipient private sector enterprises in this part of the world and a growing, I will say, source of energy in the communities of very small entrepreneurs that are becoming more and more important in managing waters. How do you transmit to them essential concepts such as the hydrological cycle, let alone climate change? And how can you build enough capacity to maintain and become sustainable through time? Something of the same nature was done in Morocco, but here with a very, even I would say more challenging groups, because these were nomads. So these are people that really do not stay in one place. How do you work with them the concept of water conservation when basically they're here tomorrow, they use their resources. You come 1 or 2 months later and they're hundreds of miles away. And nonetheless, in these very fragile systems in the northern Sahara, southern Sahara, because it's in Morocco, the interactions between groundwater and surface water and the depletion of the few existing wells and the contamination or pollution is a very, very complicated water problem in a society that doesn't have a definite structure. So if we move down the road, again, here in Tanzania, working more in alliances, and in particular now in water sanitation and hygiene, combining water resources management with services production, and all in an environment where capacity building is major. But we do not just do the engineering or water sector part. For us, biodiversity is also a major issue. How to handle the resources while maintaining the biodiversity and supporting the expansion of species that are endangered. The same goes in terms of viewing the watershed as a unit. And this is in particular in our project, in the projects that we are developing in Georgia, where a country that is emerging from a very specific system that comprised the ex-Soviet Union and is willing and very strongly fighting to become a member of a community in the region that is based on progress, on private practices, but at the same time has inherited an environment with a huge amount of problems, especially in water, and with very little knowledge of basic participatory skills, because the government was the daddy and the father who did everything for them. So even at the level of an apartment building, you know, the fact that you need to have an association to handle the distribution of water, the billing of electricity, the maintenance is a concept that doesn't exist, because that was not something that they used to do. So if you add to that then the concept of handling or managing water, then it becomes a situation even more complex. And for some reason this is not working, and I apologize for that. Your computer, but that's okay. And so another example is the whole issue of water security. How we assure that that water, under different circumstances, climate change, human pressures, population movements, and also very, very weak governments, such as, for example, in Rwanda. How do you introduce and how you carry on activities that will be sustainable in the future? And that's why we, like I indicated, we dedicate a lot of efforts towards capacity building at various levels, from the government all the way to community-based organizations. So for us, strengthening the local capacity is important, and we are also doing that kind of activities in one of our latest projects. This one started just 3 months ago in Colombia, where we are prioritizing and helping the Colombian universities work with local decision makers to improve conservation strategy in the Andean Amazon. So for us, applying integrated water resources management is definitely a must. It's critical for the successful implementation and long-term benefits of any intervention or any project that we do, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in Asia, whether it's in Latin America. And it doesn't matter the nature of the project, whether it's a project more dedicated to conservation or more dedicated to support communities or to support development of policies by government. However, the inclusion of IWRM as a process to promote development, but also to sustain development and maximize whatever results come out of our various programs for social welfare on the one hand, for managing the resource in an equitable manner, but at the same time for providing sustainability from the environmental context. If we conceptualize IWRM in this manner, then there are key considerations that we need to take. And again, I'm going to go very quickly because I know that there are very good presentations that will go more deeply. But first thing, the river basin is the appropriate unit for key management. And IWRM is definitely an instrument to deliver but economic efficiency, social equity, and should also deliver environmental sustainability. And these are characteristics or elements that are of utmost importance for sustainable development. Also, if we apply IWRM, then we enable the appropriate inclusion of water-related disasters in allocation of environmental impacts. And of course, the importance of water should be recognized not just at the community level, but at the highest level of decision making internationally, nationally, and basin-wise. And by applying IWRM, the objective is that all sectors related to water should benefit. And in particular, IWRM is the foundation for advancing in progressing in adaptation of climate change. If we do not have a system, an instrument of IWRM in place, it's very, very difficult to respond to the kind of challenges that Carlos and Fernando have presented in their talks. But the challenge is, how do you define sustainability in an IWRM scheme? How can you say that this system, this scheme is sustainable vis-a-vis a different scheme? What element, what characteristics, what conditions are key for sustainability in IWRM? Where and when and how to measure those indicators or those characteristics? And last but not least, how to identify and define indicators that characterize the sustainability, not of the watershed, not of the community, but IWRM itself. That is a question that we have not posed ourselves, because we're all claiming out there we have to do IWRM, but how do we measure if IWRM is sustainable or not? And what do we need to measure? What time scales, etc. So with this in mind, we set up to our neighbors, Mexicans. You have a great water community, great professionals in the water sector. So we're coming to you to share our thoughts and to share your knowledge and to ask ourselves those questions and see what do you think about it. So the first objective is to debate on sustainability of IWRM in the context of climate change and variability. We know that for IWRM you have a number of elements that will influence, but if we abstract ourselves and just say from the climate change perspective, what can influence sustainability? And so that's one question. And of course, here's where we need the exchange of experience, yours and ours. And hopefully, we can identify potential areas of collaboration that will help us address those questions, because for us, they're instrumental when we design and we try to help developing countries, especially in areas of Africa, in areas of Asia, and to move forward. And we hope also to, some of you will become so motivated that will be willing to join us in a publication that is being put together on this particular topic in the Elsevier series. So with that, I bring you our attention in our pamphlets here to our website, where these discussions are being taken place in blogs and in different papers. So thank you.
Thank you, Maya. It's very nice and wonderful presentation. We have at least 3 questions who can accommodate, and my colleagues will be the first question.
So, thank you for so inspiring presentation. The thing is that I like it because we are exactly working on a project here in an integrated approach. It's not exactly, the unit is not exactly the basin. We are working in general on a landscape, but a landscape can be a basin also. So in this project we have, the main problem was to work with the communities. We have been working with them like 1.5 years. We are working with some civil communities, the civil communities and the NGOs that are working with them. So at this point we have reached some agreements to intervene the areas and to have this help from the government. We have been working in very different levels. These are projects that are multi-stakeholder and multi-objective, so they are very complex. Most of the work has not been done. Methodologies are still to be developed, things like that. So I am very glad to hear that you are working in these kind of units and that we have some common projects. Regarding what I would like to tell about this is the influence. How can we sustain to make this kind of methodology sustainable? I think that from an economic perspective, if you link the project to economic incentives, the probability of these projects surviving in the future could be increased. That's what we are trying here. That's our hypothesis. We think that if the government keeps giving money, or the international organizations, they are not going to be sustainable. Mm-hmm. So to sustain that, what we are trying here is to develop the economic incentives to keep the projects going on, and that's what we are working here in Expo. We are trying to construct this green business, things that make that the people feel comfortable with the project, and they can run the project even the government is not there. So that's what we are trying here. I think there are many areas of collaboration like that. Later on I'm going to present this project. So in fact, by the way, this project, we started working on this project because Carlos, 2 years ago, told me, yeah, we are doing this kind of simulations, this mathematical stuff, statistical stuff, but we are not developing a real intervention. So that's what we approach the communities, and I think this project is working, and I think we can link these two blows.
Thank you.
I think it's a very interesting concept, the sustainability of IWRM. I was at the beginning of the Global Water Partnership and the World Water Council. And I think that when we started looking, I think it's 95, 94, on these concepts, we thought that IWRM by itself would be a very important project. But over the years, I think we're recognizing now that by itself is not attractive. It's not so attractive that we thought at the beginning. So, but I think it's the topic we're talking about, how do we make it sustainable? I think it's a good one. But probably the problem is that for many countries, I think it's the same in the US, but in Mexico in particular, I think that the water is important, that it fulfills some of the objectives and goals of people. So in the beginning, it's a water supply for people who are far from achieving the goals. If you look at statistics, you say Mexico, it's 95% covered by water supply. But if you go to communities that we are doing now, in our project here, probably we can talk about that matter. We're talking about going to the small communities, 10,000 to 100,000, and we're looking at the coverage, and it is not true. You have the pipes, but you don't have the water and the quality. And then looking at people and say, well, the social objectives are first. And then the other one is now is energy and food, and the nexus that we're talking about is getting to be more important. So I think I was shifting for a pure concept of IWRM. It's a purity, and that's the concept. And to see more on the ground needs of people, and how you combine these two things is becoming to be the most important thing. The watershed is the unit for planning. We know that 40 years ago in the water community. But how do you go out and building the organizations in watersheds that are really fulfilling the things? And that is a problem. And we're discussing now that many of these that were created in the last 15 years are not successful. So probably that is an important topic, because our network, water networks in the university, it's created on the idea of IWRM. But if you look at the project that we're working on, and much more on the ground projects and sectorial things, how do you accommodate these two objectives and be sustainable? I think it's a topic to be discussed, and probably can get some conclusions at the end. And we'll be very much interested in looking at special ways of collaborating with foreign international university, especially probably in developing our curricula on water management. So that's one of our projects today. So we'll be probably talking about that at the end of the course. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Maria. I think it is very inspiring to hear you saying these things that we've been thinking about. I think that, well, I'm thinking about what we could collaborate on, your university and our university, and now I have two topics to start with, which is hurricanes. Maybe this is of interest for Florida University, International University, and it's very important for us also in Mexico as a source of water. Okay? The other thing that I'm seeing here is that when we talk about this integrated water management, whatever, and integrated environmental assessment and integrated assessment models and all these things, what is missing, and there is room also for us to collaborate, is in developing methodology. We don't, what we do is now build a sort of a mosaic, and trying to get pieces together and fitting them when they don't fit very well. We fit them by force instead of by planning or by design. And I think that this is another area in which we could be collaborating. In fact, the pink is, this is one of the problems that we immediately found when, the pink is a program of the university that has a little bit of money to support projects. And then we decided to support projects around the topics of climate change and sustainability, poverty, and all these topics. And then what happened is that we always give a recommendation: think integrally, think systemically, think. But what happens is that very few researchers in the university, and I'm sure that happens everywhere, have this idea of stating from the beginning of all that it's multi-inter and disciplinary. So what we get back is a project in one subject, a project in another subject, in a project in a third subject, and say, well, you know, our purpose in the program is to produce research that is useful for policy making or for doing things, you see. And the way that we are receiving back these projects that we support are not helping in that direction. So what we are forced to, or we were forced to, is think about methods to integrate that information coming from almost independent lines of research, and trying to put them together into something that would be digestible by a policymaker. Say, well, you know, wow, this study has this and this and touches poverty and touches water and touches resources and touches biodiversity and get this. So we are trying to do that, of developing this sort of methodology for integration of these resources. And I think that integrated water resources management would be something that would somehow benefit from this sort of research, that we could start something doing in that direction. And my third comment, I think, is the third comment. In terms of, we heard this at the forum, you see, water, or in more general terms, natural resources should be central to any future planning, country planning, in a way. It is not the economy, it is not the oil, or it is not the, it is a view of integrated resource management that should be centered, and mainly in countries like Mexico. I was thinking, if you have a lot of water, you don't worry about water as a resource, as a scarce resource. In Mexico, we have the two streams. We have a lot of water in some places, and we have very little water in others. So in places it's scarce, in others it's not. But then it becomes a central issue of development. And this is something that you've known and you've learned, because being in Africa and in those places, if you don't have water, you don't have anything to do there, you see? Go away, do something else, you see? Emigrate, because there is nothing that you can do. Water becomes a fundamental issue for those countries in which it's a fundamental issue. And that corresponds to more than 2 billion people in the world. So, and among those peoples are us. So it becomes a very important issue, water as a resource.
Let's see, Carlos, if we want to really push for more research on integrated water resources management in our university, in these areas of multidisciplines and things, then we need to change the way that you evaluate researchers.
Yes, yes.
And this we have talked inside the university a lot. And they agree with what we say, but never gets to the point to change the method of the evaluation. If we don't do that, then you're going to continue having sectoral and very specific little topic research in
X and Y.
no?
Yeah.
And otherwise, I think that that's a very important issue. We have to recognize that and to see what we recommend, not only from our point of view in the network, but for the international point of view to the universities to change
But
the way
that's
you-
another topic in which we could.
But that's a topic for us, a very important topic inside the university, in order to promote more interdisciplinary research, which it's important for IWRM. And there's no incentives in this university, at least there's no incentives to do it. There are some crazy people like ourselves that do this type of things, but we have to do other things in order to be evaluated in a proper way.
That could be something that we could, I don't know if you have that sort of problem in Florida International University, because for us, it's a big problem. So we cannot do things that we should be doing because the evaluation system promotes mono or one discipline, super specialization, where we are, the world's discussion is about multi, inter, whatever. So that's another thing that if you had that solved, you could illuminate us so that we can bring that to the university and say, you see, there are places in which the evaluation, the academic evaluation methods have changed so that they promote this. And this works here, and this works there, and we don't know where.
Well, I said during my talk that we are a strange animal in the university because in reality we have broken all the rules. Like for example, in our unit we have people that are from one college and people that are from other colleges, and we all work under the same unit. Ryan is from the School of Law, Chumelis is in the School of Public Health, I'm in the and Alberto, we're both in the School of Science and Arts and Science. And so just having faculty from various schools in one unit is a major challenge to some people that still don't understand. We, the work that we develop in the field, doing development, that's not writing, state-of-the-art science. So for us, it's a very delicate balance, working in an entity such as the FIU Waters Center or the GLOWS program, because although you're still doing applied research, although our colleagues publish, of course, you are not doing it at the same rate of the regular professor that comes, does his class, does his research, writes his papers, and goes home. But one thing that we're seeing, and we're not just seeing it at FIU, I'm sure you're seeing it here too, is that because of the more scarce the economic resources for universities are becoming, and also because more and more people are looking for solutions at the universities, communities, policymakers, industry, there is more and more pressure on the regular academician that you see our younger professors, our younger people coming into the system, that they tend to have a more holistic mind, and some of them working against the system for the system to allow them to work in an environment like ours. So in our context, we have developed the concept of associate close staff, which are professors that are on a tenure track. They want to become permanent, but that at the same time, they want to be engaged in real life situations. And this is a mechanism that is very incipient, that we still have to explain to a lot of people in the university. I cannot say that everybody's convinced. I cannot say that a lot of people are afraid of it, and I cannot say that a lot of people are fighting it. But I think that at the end of the day, the mechanism is at least in the United States, with everything that is happening in terms of resources, financial and whatnot, this is going to be the only mechanism that I would say in the short and medium term universities are going to have if they want to continue doing research, because the National Science Foundations less and less are providing resources to do very specific science. And so, again, I mean, it is not an easy task, and our structure may not be the best, but there is some space for change. And again, I guess, we're still here, we're still alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can add that this is also reflected in the legal academy in the United States. That previously, it was very much more of a traditional academic setting in which you were a professor of constitutional law or constitutional law and a historical context, something very specific, and you went down that road. Whereas now many scholars, partly because of this new competitive arena, it's increasingly difficult to land these positions. Many young scholars have what we're calling law and economics, law and anthropology, law and environmental management. They're coming in with sort of an interdisciplinary focus. Now that being said, the schools are still, they have pressure from above, from the universities and from the general institutional context for publications. Less so these implementation programs and actual practical, methods of employing legal concepts and interdisciplinary legal concepts. We're very beholden in the United States to our law school rankings. Saying, well, we're in the top 20, or we're in the top 50, or we're striving to be in the top 100. And part of the criteria, a very important criteria, are publications and law review articles. And so we see that reflected a bit, myself with my dual position at Close, is that they're very excited about the kind of work I'm doing in this law and concept. At the same time, they want to see the law review articles and those publications. But I think our experience at Glows too, in terms of putting together an interdisciplinary team, that's much easier to do it at the beginning when you're establishing that institution. When you're talking about watershed management institution building, that initial phase is key, is critical. So Maria didn't have, I wouldn't say like too extraordinary of a time putting together our interdisciplinary team. But if you were to establish Glows 10 years in, and then ask a faculty member from each school to come in and be part of this in a significant way, would be, I think, much harder. We found that experience. To give you an example, in Florida, we have somewhat of IWRM in our state with our water management districts. And they are somewhat interdisciplinary. A lot of sort of policy and legal people, but we've got some economists and some scientists, and that was sort of the idea when they set up this legal structure some 15, 20 odd years ago. And that has been somewhat effective and sort of a model in the United States for watershed management on sort of the state governance level. But it's really, I think, what we've seen is that it's really key that that interdisciplinary focus is established right at the beginning when your institution builds.
Well, what you see is also seen at an institutional level. I remember a number of years ago there was a large meeting workshop in the Netherlands because they had failed to get together all the different government actors in water and some other fields to work it together. And why was that? Now, part of it is exactly what are the incentives for promotion and when you're talking about evaluation. So, and then within UNESCO itself, UNESCO has, where I worked 16 years, it's got several sectors, they call it. There is natural sciences, there's social and human sciences, there's education, also let's say there's ocean science, all functions a bit like a different sector. And so you have these different fields, and there have been enormous efforts to see how the different sectors can work together, because they obviously realize that the best way of getting together, science and culture, and science and education, and some things have come out, but not the full richness of what should be possible. And then that's partly because of this sectorization, because even budgetarily it becomes a mess, because you have certain rules how to give money out. When there is something which is joint, unless they force you, you reiterate to your sector and you say, oh yes, this is good, 20% of my budget will go to there. So it's, there are many forces which play against it. And then very likely some of what we're talking about is precisely to reflect that. But at least some things are working out, and I think if I use a good experimental ground.
It's a very interesting discussion. I mean, we would have continued, but we have different sessions to continue this session, interesting discussion. So, according to our program, Thank you, Maria. So we go for maybe 5 minutes for a group photo. Maybe for photographers will show us where we can go.